Already welcomed you all, I'm sure, at one point or another to St. Paul's today, but I am delighted to do so again. I'm obscuring your view of somebody, so I'll move over here. How we are going to conduct this is I think we've built this as a forum with the bishops of our companion diocese, and everyone will have opportunity to ask a question if you would like to, in written form. And Nathan, there's Nathan. Nathan is one of our chapter members here at St. Paul's, and today will be my co-moderator as we go through this Q&A together. We're going to begin, though, with allowing each bishop a few minutes to give us a brief overview of how ministry is in their diocese. And so we'll hear from them first, and that may stimulate a question from you. If it does, please fill out a card. Deacon Jean is going to facilitate those. If you all look around, you'll see her at the back there. So please raise your hand if you need a card. You will be given one. Okay. Are we ready? Okay. Bishop Swift has offered to begin since he's finished his lunch. And so, Nathan, do you have a stopwatch? No. Looks like that's on me then. Okay. We'll be watching the time so everyone has...
If I run over 8 minutes, something will be done to me.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm going to stand up after 7, and then you'll know. Okay. And you have a microphone, so... All right.
Am I on?
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Welcome everyone. Then here we go.
So thank you all again so much for the welcome today. It's been great. You can tell I'm in the States. I've got a y'all need Jesus coffee mug, which I've got it so when I'm drinking, people see it, so they ask what it's about. But no, so a brief overview of where we are in Brechin. And I don't know how many folk know a lot, so just briefly, we're a diocese in Scotland, and we're quite small. There's 24 church communities that are part of it. We're not the smallest in Scotland by any means. Very, very ancient, of course, bishops of Brechin going back to 11 something or other. But small diocese, East Coast, very, very farming-centric sort of area. So similarities of a very different scale to where you are here. And so Nicola suggested talk about something that seems to be going well, something that's maybe emerging, and maybe something a little bit thorny. So going well, and I'm conscious I have one of my rectors in the audience here, so yeah, that's right. A recording to take back. I think something going well is a good, positive spirit within the clergy and communities in the diocese. And that might not sound like much, but actually that's quite a big deal. In a lot of our dioceses, particularly having gone through something like COVID, having had all sorts of anxieties over the years, for people to be quite positive. And we have quite a few new clergy. I'm, again, 12 full-time paid clergy in the diocese, a lot more who are retired, unpaid lay readers. But we've had quite a few new people come, Jim, one of them, and there's a positive spirit. It doesn't mean problems don't arise, issues don't happen, but actually when we're working together as sisters and brothers, we spend time together, we support each other, we maybe communicate reasonably well. There's not too much anxiety about finance. That can be really handicapping. If diocesan meetings are all about fighting about finance, that's not really the story at the moment. It's a bit about mission and ways forward and what can we do with the resources we've been blessed with. So that's a very sort of bishop thing to think is going well. The stuff that seems to be blossoming, there are really exciting connections happening in local communities, and they look very different in different places. So places where Ukrainian refugees are being invited in, and food and dancing and fellowship and bits of worship have now been happening for over a year and are beginning to become normal. Or engagement with local schools, which wasn't there before, but relationships being built between, I know that's one of the things Jim is really, really gifted at, so many things, but engaging with the schools, connecting with the young people. And it's exciting when you start to hear these things are happening. A food project here, an ecumenical collaboration there. There's all these little signs of not just being, we'd say, sitting in silos. We're not just sitting in a silo worrying about the money running out and dying, which is not great. It's actually beginning to look quite exciting that these little things begin to bubble up. But the thorny issue is we're sat in little silos worrying about the money, wondering if we'll die, which is kind of normal. We are church in Western Europe in the 21st century, and that's a hard place to be a disciple. It's not straightforward. It was privileged once upon a time, a lot less so now. So we do have anxieties. We have committed as a whole denomination to reach net zero by 2030. That's 6 and a bit years away. Long way to go. Will cost a lot of money. Will involve enormous changes in how we look after our church buildings, how we drive, how we just think about everything. Now, we'll all be drinking out of "You'll Need Jesus" cups because they're not disposable. In fact, I'll suggest it to the committee. But actually, big challenges. We're going to be sacrificing a lot of things we might be able to do, making ourselves weaker in order to do something like that which is right. So there is some thorny time ahead. How's my 8 minutes going? 3 more. Oh, great. Excellent. Can I keep going? Is that all right? Yeah. But when I arrived in the diocese 5 years ago, and Bishop Scarf and Bishop Elena from Swaziland came to my consecration, and I think that the jewel in the crown of what we were doing is actually this. Something which has lasted for 40 years, where a relationship has been built between, it's been different groups of young people for all those periods of time, bishops connecting, church-to-church work going on, project work happening in southern Africa. As I came into a diocese and anxiety levels were high and money and everything, the companionship link between Eswatini, between Iowa, and between Brechin, it was just unambiguously good and positive and of God. The fact that there were so many relationships. Chatting out in the narthex bit at the back today, so many people were saying, oh, I came to Brechin and I met this person, or I'm still in touch with a young person who came in a choir in the 1980s, or people who remember Bishop Luscombe, who came over so many times. He sadly died last year, which means he can't phone me up to tell me what I'm doing wrong. So, but I'm sure he's doing that with God now. Sorry, Ted. But no, he was brilliant and set such wonderful things in place. So actually being here today, being part of this companionship, is such a great example to all of the churches in the diocese. I've still got a minute? Excellent. I can keep going for hours. Duracell. No, it's been such a good example, such a good thing to commit to re-energize, and I hope this isn't the last thing we're going to do. We are going to keep on going and growing and developing. So my greetings from Brechin to you all. I bring them from everyone back there, and thank you very much. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. It is such a privilege and honor to be amongst you. Is it morning? It's noon. Yes,
yeah,
we are highly privileged to be part of what is going on in the 3 dioceses. We are happy. We knew about it during the time of Bishop Mabuza. I think that is everywhere when we started knowing more about the companionship. So we are glad that we are continuing with that. Okay, going back to Swaziland, we are fairly new in the diocese, 1.5 years, but something is happening. So you will hear about it. When we came into office, the first thing that was imprinted in our spirit is to establish God's kingdom. And I think it was a proper theme, considering the fact that we're coming out of COVID. People were desperate. They wanted to know what the future holds. They wanted to know what good can come out from church after the churches were closed and everything. So when you came in, we were given that mandate by God to establish the kingdom. What is positive is that people have come back in numbers in church. They are there, they are vibrant, they're worshiping God, they're enjoying God's presence. The good thing about us in Eswatini is that we are emotional beings. So whether it's worship, whether it's prayer, or whatever, we are able to express ourselves. So I think that is good, seeing people coming to the presence of the Lord every Sunday in their numbers. When I say numbers, we are talking 100, 200, 300, 350. So that on its own is a blessing. And it comes as a blessing because for us as a diocese, our strength is evangelism. And we always make sure that people are reached out in many different ways. It may be through spreading the word, it may be through prayer, it may be visiting them, but above all, it's the projects that we do together. Most of the time, we are asked, we are appreciated as people who are giving to the community through the NCPs, the feeding schemes that we were in collaboration with Iowa and Brechin in feeding people. There are schools, it's about 4 schools and I think 9 different NCPs whereby people are fed, especially children. We make sure that at least they get 1 meal a day. It is something for our people because that meal may mean the only meal for the day. So no matter how little it is, we appreciate that we are making a difference through what we are getting from you as our partners. So it is the projects that we have, apart from the NCPs, we also do other projects that some of you may know about. We've got the Piggery project in Luve that is working. Because of COVID, obvious, many things went down. But slowly but surely, it is picking up. Just this year, we bought about 8 sows. So we are slowly picking up. We are believing that we are going to be, by the end of the year, something great is going to come out of the project. There is also what we call it's our forest. It's both indigenous forest and forest that has been planted. We are hopeful that by this year, early next year, we are going to start harvesting the forest that has been planted because we have got a firm that deals with forestry. And already they are the ones who encouraged us to plant the trees. Therefore, we are hopeful to be able to benefit from that and maybe to replant trees again as a source of income. Then there's also the Bishop Elina Wamukoya's forest. I don't want to lie, it is there, but maybe because of COVID, but we are still trying to resuscitate it again in her memory. Then we've got bees. Bees are also there, but the problem again, I think it's the positioning where they are. They're accessible. So people in the local community, I think they're the ones that are benefiting than us as a diocese, but we are trying hard again. Then the recent project that we have begun is in my heart. It's the God's project. How did it start? As a bishop, you always visit parishes for confirmation. But as a new bishop, everybody will be excited. They're farmers. So some of them are going to give you a cow, others a goat. And it's usually yours as a bishop. But somehow it clicked in us that no, let us then begin a project for the diocese through the goats. So we encourage parishioners in the diocese to give us goats. Then we are starting a farm. Good news is that we've got about 8 goats and they're all pregnant that are there as a startup. So that is positive. And then we are looking forward to capacity building. It is a known fact that in an institutions there are strengths and weaknesses. We are looking forward in equipping, especially our young people. What we have noticed in the country is that most of our young people have gone through tertiary, but they are unemployed. So as a church, again, we are looking at means of starting projects that are going to make a difference in the young people's life. We are looking at practical work, and we will, what does that mean? Is it a minute or 3?
A minute.
It's a minute. Oh, okay, thank you. You are not counting until I start talking. Yes. Yes. So we are looking forward in utilizing the land that we have, because we have land in Swaziland, but most of the time it was idle. And then we are saying we can't be having problems yet we've got land. So we want to empower young people, we want to empower everybody in the church through the projects that are going to begin in the land. One thorn in the flesh is that Swaziland is going through a phase, politically and also in church. The fact that it's a new administration, there's a difficulty of letting go. So somehow there have been those glitches even inside the house of God. But we are trusting God in that, because in God we trust.
This is an interesting moment, right? Because all of you, except for the pilgrims, are already here in Iowa. So you may be starting more information, but I'll just go ahead on the theme of thorns and buds and a bloom. I'm going to start with the thorn, because you just led right into one of our big thorns, right? In the state of Iowa, all of you from Iowa know we've got some pretty weighty political things happening. Folks who are beloved children of God are finding that they are not being able to be treated as beloved children of God by the people who are supposed to care for them, by their schools, by their physicians, by professionals in the communities. And that's a weighty issue for me, right? Because as church, we proclaim the gospel of love. And that is not matching up with what our state is doing, even when our state is receiving support from some other Christian communities in the things that they're doing. So that just becomes very complicated. And the witness of the gospel, the witness of what we understand to be the gospel in the public square has become very, very important in Iowa. And so that's one of the thorns that I think we're experiencing, learning better how to engage in the public sphere. Another one of our thorns you had mentioned, I think, right at the end, it's that concern, right, about money, getting less money, and shrinking, having fewer people, and we worry, and then we isolate, and then we have smaller and smaller communities. That's the concern, right? And that's the thorn that we're trying to grow around and create buds and blossoms so that the thorn is just hidden away and we don't pay attention to it, because that's not what is important. That's not what's important. One thing that I think is going well is, and I don't know if this is going to be both the bud and the bloom, we'll just have to see. A year ago at the last diocesan convention, I named 3 priorities for our diocese, and they were strengthening congregations, supporting clergy and lay leadership, and deepening our connection to God. And so we've been working in various ways throughout the diocese to begin that work. And some of it is blooming beautifully in various places. We've had some contemplative prayer workshops around the diocese, and we're developing, through doing that, a wonderful relationship with a monk in the Diocese of Nebraska, Brother James Dowd, who some of you may have met at some of those workshops. And some of those workshops are now beginning to bear fruit in new and exciting ways, particularly at Trinity Cathedral in Davenport. In strengthening congregations, we've got a project that folks at the cathedral are involved in, the Genesis 2 project, which a number of our congregations are involved in, which is about strengthening the congregation and learning how to reach out beyond our doors, which is really such a theme. And I heard you talking about it, and also you. And in each of our unique contexts, that looks different. And so learning how to reach out beyond our doors, that strengthens us as congregations, maybe in different ways than we might have thought of before, and strengthens our communities as well. And supporting clergy and lay leadership in various ways. We've done some training and so on, and looking at doing more of that. So those are all exciting. And I guess a bigger bud, maybe, is when you become a bishop, and my friends will probably remember, you become a bishop, and people say to you, Bishop, what's your vision? What's your strategy? What's your vision for us as a diocese? And my response is, that's something we're all going to discern together. It's not me alone saying, that's where we're going, follow me. It's all of us together listening for God's call, and then following that call together, that we discern together. And so that process is beginning. It's been beginning for a while, and it's kind of moving into a bigger, more open phase, and you'll learn more about that soon. But that's, just so you know, that's coming down the line. And this, having these friends here, this is really something that is in full bloom here in the diocese. Some of you had the opportunity to be with us also on Friday evening at Christ Church in Cedar Rapids, where they welcomed us with a wonderful outdoor picnic. We planted a tree that will be part of the Anglican Communion Forest, and the fact that we did that at Christ Church in Cedar Rapids was wonderful, because some of you will remember that the derecho that came through in 2020 particularly hit Cedar Rapids very hard, and that church and its grounds very, very hard. So doing that was wonderful. But the wonderful piece of bloom, I want to just say, is the welcome that we received and the genuine love and relationship that goes back decades. And it's such a privilege for me as a new bishop to have just kind of dropped into this. I didn't know this was here, but boom. It was a wonderful surprise for me when I became bishop, and it's just something that is in absolute full bloom, but it's one of those wonderful blossoms that is not fading. It is continuing to blossom kind of in an indefinite way. And I haven't even had Nicola stand up yet, so I feel like I'm winning. Nicola is another wonderful, wonderful bud, actually. I'll just say that because of our events today. So.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Now we go to some questions and answers, and I'm picking up on something that Bishop Andrew already mentioned. I liked the way you put it, that you felt that the companion relationship was wholly positive. And so that's a wonderful thing to hear. I think you mentioned that from the perspective of being a new bishop. And I wondered if you would each comment on how does your diocese benefit from this companion relationship? I don't mind who goes first.
Well, I'll go ahead and start. Yeah, if you had been there on Friday night, or if you are here today, you have a sense of that already. How the Diocese of Iowa benefits from this companionship goes so deep in the work of the Holy Spirit. Relationship, love, going across the continents, what Bishop Andrew talked about, learning about the Anglican Communion in other contexts, very different from our own, even when we might think, oh, Scotland's not all that different from Iowa. It's really in Eswatini that's the real difference. Actually, there are a number of differences, and we have just had the most wonderful time exploring those. And that helps us to grow. It helps us to grow, and it helps us to grow, period. And it helps us to grow deeper in our relationship with God as we meet Christ in one another and get to know Christ in a different way through each other.
Oh, thank you. I think it's more or less what my colleague is saying. For us as a diocese, it is always beneficiary to know that you've got sisters and brothers in the globe that are praying, mentioning your name, mentioning your diocese every day. Because as we go on with our morning prayer in the diocesan chapel with my staff, we make sure that we mention each parish according to the calendar. So that keeps us going. Secondly, it is the love that you can feel, even if it's far away from each other. Just a WhatsApp call, a WhatsApp message from my colleagues, from people coming from all over, that on its own, you feel the love of God, and it's a benefit for the diocese. And the belonging, to know that I am part of a bigger family. It is not just Eswatini, but it is my brothers and sisters in Brechin and in Iowa. Then lastly, it's the monetary. We cannot run away from the fact that as Swaziland, we have been benefiting from this relationship. I was sharing with the bishops that a chief in one of the rural areas is looking forward in seeing this bishop who is feeding his community. To him, it's this bishop feeding the community. But the truth of the matter is all of us doing that. We are just conduits. So whatever that you give makes a huge difference. And what I like most is that it is not only making a difference for Episcopalian or Anglicans, but it is benefiting the community. Those children always have hope at school that when we run in the morning, even if there's nothing that we ate at home, but we are sure when we get to school, there's going to be a bowl of soup. It makes a huge difference. So thank you.
I'd echo an awful lot of what Bishop Betsy, Bishop Dalsey have said in terms of the importance of a discipleship relationship, a relationship in God with other parts of the Anglican Communion. I'd observe, the only thing I'd add is we definitely have seasons in this companionship. It's run for, I think we reckoned last year, 40 years last year. So we're in 41 years now. And there have been different seasons of intensity or focus or development. So in my diocese, the companionship is known strongly as a thing which we would fundraise for to support the neighborhood care points, or we had a big appeal for the bees when they were being set up, and just getting involved in those projects, because that's what we do. We are blessed with resource, and we wish to share that blessing with our sisters and brothers in Africa. But then Iowa and Brechin, what does that relationship mean? And over the years, there have been plenty of exchanges of people and ideas, and the bishops go backwards and forwards, that's fine, but actually pulpit swaps for clergy, or choirs coming over, or here we are, we have pilgrims, young people from Scotland coming over to meet other people here. So I think the whole companionship in those different seasons blesses in different ways. I mean, I'm really excited that and I think we're on an up in all of it at the moment. It hasn't been a down at all. It's just, there's different ways of exploring, sharing, seeing how they might work. And the season ahead of us, I think, is going to be an interesting and an exciting one. Communicating about it back at base becomes the issue. You know, everyone knows about it, don't they? And then we suddenly discover that our churches are full of people who maybe are a bit newer, and actually they don't. So we have to keep sharing the good news of the companionship within the diocese, within the bulletins, with the things that we do. But no, it blesses in so many ways. It blesses in so many ways.
Very much. I'm going to continue with a question that Nathan and I prepared before this gathering, and after that we'll get to more of the ones asked from the group here. But Nathan and I, were particularly interested in hearing how you see God working through the people in your diocese. Maybe a particular example comes to mind, something that gave you particular joy. And I know some of you have touched on that a little bit already, but it's an opportunity to expand on that. So how do you see God working through the people of your diocese?
Maybe one should say it is making a difference in people's life. Using what we have to make a difference. We've got schools. We are able to reach those children, those families. We've got the neighboring care points. We are able to reach out to community, people who are in need. We've got people, volunteers, who are going to say, we want to go out and reach people in hospitals or those who are sick at home. So we make sure that whatever that it is, whether we are carrying sanitary pads or we are carrying disposables or those packages, it makes a difference. And some will even go to an extent whereby they'll just identify a house of an old lady or man. They'll go there, they will clean the yard, clean the house, do some of the chores, because it's a known fact. Some of you may not relate with it, but people still go to the river in Swaziland to fetch water. People still go and fetch firewood. So young people will just do that. They're going to say, we are going to this community, and they assist in a way. So it's not only the preaching, as in the gospel, speaking about the Bible, but it's also the practicality part of it.
And I think I'd pick up on how I see God acting through people. I'd pick up on how surprised the people are when they realize God is acting through them. The number of people who go, well, I couldn't do anything, or I don't do anything. And actually they're so surprised when it turns out they're turning lives upside down, or you open the door to a refugee who's been treated as an other. And that's not hard, you just do it. But the joy and surprise that they're then greeted with. And as churches, if we build up our surprised people, and their own confidence grows, they become amazed. From the morning's reading, you step out the boat, you feel you're sinking, you're lifted back up again. The sense of surprise and wonder and joy when people are fed, or refugees are welcomed, or people whose identity might be under attack within the country are treated as wonderful, beloved children of God. There's a surprise when you do these simple little things, and it's of God. And I love seeing it happen, the joy and surprise. The dean of our diocese doesn't run the cathedral. The dean of the diocese is the person who stops me misbehaving too badly. That's some job, I tell you. Anyway, she just retired, Dean Fay. And much to her surprise, got invited to go and meet the king at Holyrood Palace at a garden party because she was so highly regarded within the community. They picked up she was retiring and off she went. Hi, Charles. Shake hands, that kind of thing. So that surprise is just gorgeous, and that's the joy that I see.
Wonderful, wonderful. I feel like there's sort of a similar theme because I think of thinking of our churches coming out of COVID. You know, we're basically back. We don't have the restrictions. I mean, we're still doing some communion things differently in some of our places, but folks are coming back and resuming many of the acts of service that they did before, maybe feeding programs or visiting, that kind of thing. And that's lovely, right? Handing out a sandwich and whatever that is, it's all lovely. And I think that the transformation happens in the relationship that develops then in that interaction. So earlier this week, we were at the Agape Cafe in Iowa City. And every week, they feed, this group of volunteers, largely volunteers, feeds whoever comes a breakfast that is made to order. So the people can come in and sit down and they order off of a menu. And it's like cloth tablecloths, cloth napkin, just like a restaurant. And that's wonderful, right? Food is wonderful. But it's the relationships that develop over the weeks and over the years of the volunteers and the folks who come for breakfast with each other, that's, I think, where the real transformation happens. And that's just one tiny example of what I see all over the diocese in many, many places.
Thank you. Could you please tell us about what led you to ministry in the first place? And then also the process of becoming a bishop in your diocese and how it may differ between the different countries.
Shall I go? I think probably the persistence of God. I fought it off a long time. Long time. Long time. So I came from a background in engineering and industry and business, and had a whole career in life doing that. But there was always something in the background. There was a niggle, a call. I describe it sometimes like there was God's radio waves of call were there, and you tune them in, and you suddenly realize they were always there. But it was a sense of wanting to serve, wanting to not just build up the shareholder stock prices and improve the profitability, or actually my industry minimize the losses. It was shipbuilding, which is not a good way of making money. Don't invest in shipbuilding. But no, that sense of call crystallized. And it was a late vocation. So I was in my 30s. You'd call that late vocation, maybe. But eventually, after 10 years of putting that off, I responded, went through discernment, and went and trained for the ministry. And then eventually, years later, our equivalent to the presiding bishop, the primus in Scotland, and I suppose I'd become a little bit known. I was the dean of a diocese, so I was the bishop's fixer. I think that's what a dean is, as well as my day job. And I'd stand up at the general convention and say how we should be spending our money on mission, not saving it up and things like that. I wasn't that popular. But eventually our presiding bishop equivalent said, why don't you put your name forward? You know, we same as you, we have an electoral process. You have 3 to 5 candidates for a bishopric. And we don't have all the walk-around thing that you would have here. With us, we turn up on one Saturday and you give a pitch, sales pitch. Say, if I was your bishop, this is what I'd do. And then a week later, they vote on it. And so I said, make up the numbers. You'll be all right. Make up the numbers. And Brechin voted for me, which you see God moving in these things to come in there and help them and support them and guide them. And our bishops generally don't move around. So when you're elected a bishop, that's you until you finish up. And our finishing is 67, 70, something like that. So I was elected at 50, so the poor souls are stuck with me for a little while. It's very sweet. Edward gave me thumbs up. But it's been wonderful. It's joyful, it's joyous. There's tough stuff, there's hard stuff, but it really is joyful working alongside clergy, church communities, even at the national church, trying to help the structures be something that supports and blesses and enriches. And the whole church, for me, is about supporting individual communities where they are to authentically proclaim the gospel in the way that's right for them. Everything else is just about that. And it's an opportunity to do a bit of that. Are you recording that, Jim? Excellent.
Just get an amen.
Amen. Amen.
Sure.
How did it all started? I think I was 16 years old when I lost my dad. My dad was a breadwinner. So when my dad died, my mom had to stop working. Not because she wanted to stop, but because of the stigma of being a widow. So for us as a family, it then became double tragedy. There was no hope. And thank God, I will always go to church. And that is where I then felt the age of giving my life to Christ. So at the age of 17, I gave my life to Christ solely. And so my life was revolving most of the time around prayer. Prayer, that has been my life. And that is where most of the communication between me and my God started. A lot happened, but what is vivid now is that I remember, I think I was 18 years old because I was passionate with God. I was on fire for God, if I may use those words. One thing that God said to me that I cannot forget, because every time it's like I can hear it. God said, your life will change drastically at 35. I was already married when those voices came. I think I was 22, 23. First thing that came to mind, I said, am I going to be a widow at 35? I'd lost my dad, and my mom was very young at that age. I'm going to be a widow. What was going to happen? All was playing in the mind. But end of the day, I was like, God, I trust in you. Whatever change that you want to be doing, it is going to happen. Fast forward, I got the call because I was a teacher. After 10 years, I received the call from God. It became very difficult because in Swaziland, women were not ordained. So it was like, it's crazy. You are saying God is calling you. That is what my husband was asking. Is God calling you to the Anglican church? I said, yes, but nobody is being ordained as a woman in the Anglican church. I said, I don't know, but God is saying the Anglican church. But to cut the long story short, at 35, I was made a deacon. So that is when everything changed. At 35, I was made a deacon. The following year, I was then priested. They were there when I was priested, Bishop Scaff and Omar. And then we continued with life. I'm passionate with young people. So they gave me an opportunity to serve as a school chaplain at St. Michael's. It's our school, one of our cream schools in Swaziland. I served there as a chaplain. I was there for 12 years. And when the 10th year, I could tell that it was done. My mission year was just complete. Again, fast forward, I was then recruited. I went to South Africa for a year. At the height of COVID, I went there. I became a dean for 13 months. And during that period, Bishop Wamkoya passed on. May his soul rest in peace. August of the same, I think 2020, number 2021, there was then the elective assembly. People asked me, put on your name. I said, No. As in a big no. And given a chance, I'll say it again, no. Okay, there were 2 candidates. Unfortunately, they all couldn't become bishops. So the system says you then take them to the Synod of Bishops. Synod of Bishops said, your colleague then said, do you see what is happening now? That's Bishop Mabuza in camera. Do you see what is happening now? I said, yes. He said, when they approach you, make sure it's not a no this time around. So we were 2 candidates, and somehow I found myself here. So that is how it happened.
Oh, and may I say, Bishop Dalsey, you were talking about the call in your mid-30s, and there was this odd time when someone training for the ministry from the College of the Resurrection popped up to visit a college in Oxford.
Oh,
and there was some
yes.
guy training in this college in Oxford at the same time. So actually we were
Yes, as
training
an
for the
exchange
ministry.
student in Grahamstown, College of the Transfiguration, I got an opportunity to be chosen to go to Catston. And boom, in Catston,
There we were.
we were there together.
Yeah. So who knew? What a small world.
Well, thank you. We are going to wrap up at 1 o'clock today, but I encourage you, if your question wasn't asked, do take the opportunity to talk individually with someone from a companion diocese or one of our bishops here, and that will be a way that you can follow up. So we're going to move to a more fun but also important and meaningful question, I think. I'll pose it this way. What is your most meaningful or favorite piece of bishop bling? And for those of you who, yeah, you know, one of those special bishop things that only bishops have. Meaningful, though. Right.
That's a tough one.
I can start. You know, I really love my crozier. I love my crozier. It's not the same crozier that Alan put into my hand at my consecration. The crozier that I have that I use today and bring around with me most of the time was made for me by a friend, and it was my father who donated the funds for that crozier. And my friend who made it worked with me, and he even, I went to his workshop, and he put different things, like there was a broomstick and maybe a handle for a mop or something, I don't even know, a pipe. He had me hold different ones, and he said, what's the right size? Like, which one do you want? And I picked the size that felt just right. And he made a special tool out of an old roller skate, literally, so the wheels of an old roller skate, so that he could mill it exactly perfectly to that size. Wow. And put the holes in exactly so that you could screw it in, it would be straight up and down. And so I discovered how much I missed it because I damaged it. And I sent it back to him. I said, can you please fix this? And so last visitation, I used your crozier, the one that you put into my hand. And it felt different. It felt different. I mean, it wasn't wrong, but it just wasn't mine. And now I have mine back. My crozier is largely made out of wood, so yeah, I could. But let me tell you something. Because I drive around the diocese, I will never take it on an airplane because we don't carry our croziers into other dioceses. You notice that my friends did not have croziers. We only bring our crozier in our own diocese. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I was trying by sign language to see whether one of the pilgrims, who happens to be my daughter, might say what she thinks the favorite bit of bishop bling is. Would you be? Well, no, I don't know your perception of the best bit of bishop bling. There's a mic down here. So this is, if they haven't met her, this is Frankie, who's my daughter,
Hi.
who's quite used to me embarrassing her constantly.
Yeah.
So,
Disadvantage of being the child of a bishop.
You have put me on the spot here.
I know.
I feel like from you, I obviously know your backstory with the whole thing, but your pectoral cross.
Or this thing here.
Yeah, he was given it as a baptism gift when you were how old?
5 weeks.
5 weeks old.
Maybe.
And it's an Iona cross.
Yeah, yep. So it's a replica of a McKinnon cross from Iona, which is a 14th, 15th century original. This is 1930s, so you were made on Iona.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. And lived in a drawer, black and tarnished for years and years. So something about how God transforms things into other things. I thought you might talk about the bejeweled mitre, but that's another one. Another day. Oh, enormously, enormously. This is inheritance level owing her. Thanks, Frankie.
I will say it's my ring because I got an opportunity again to choose it from what I will put here, and it's the diocesan. So wherever I go, I carry diocese with me. Even if I feel discouraged by anything, I just look at my ring and I believe I'm called for this.
To close, I think an important question is how may we pray for you and for your diocese? Is there one particular thing that would be most welcome?
Always find myself when it's just extemporary prayer at the end of a meeting, praying for strength and wisdom. I think in my diocese and our churches, to have the strength to carry on and the wisdom to discern where God is taking us. So if you're praying for us, and the little prayer diaries, there's this 3-way prayer diary which is put together. Praying for strength and wisdom for all those communities would be great.
Would be very similar. The phrase that I always think of is that we may discern and follow God's call to us as a diocese. So basically the same thing.
Yeah.
It's prayer for strength to continue no matter what, and the burden of souls burden of souls instead of feeding egos. Because as ministers of the word, it's easier to push your agenda, push your ego, versus winning souls for the kingdom. So the burden of souls, and making a difference in people's lives.
Thank you. Can everyone give the bishops a round of applause? And thank you for coming today.
All right. And please take opportunity to greet one another personally after this. Thank you. Right. Bye-bye.